I'm excited to be here today at the Breakout project and to talk to you guys a little bit about scaling social enterprises that matter. So this is obviously something that matters to me as I support social entrepreneurs around the world. I have worked around the world with organizations and social entrepreneurs that are trying to start businesses that combine purpose and profit. And so really excited to see what the Breakout project is doing here in Kingston. Not a hometown, but close to Toronto, and it's exciting to see what Canada is doing and trying to get on the global stage. I wanted to start out by congratulating all of the teams that are here working this week. As you all know, entrepreneurship is a hard but very rewarding path, and it takes a lot of courage to start any enterprise. But I would say to start a social enterprise, it takes probably 10 times more courage, if not, maybe a little bit more. As a social entrepreneur, you're choosing to work on some of the most complex and challenging problems facing our society. And often social entrepreneurs are working on issues that are deeply personal to them. So there's really high stakes as they're getting started. So I wanted to congratulate all the teams for taking that first step and putting themselves out here on this stage. A lot of the speakers today and yesterday have talked about the 4 ingredients needed for innovative organizations to scale quickly. So amazing teams, capital, the right connections, and awareness. And as a social entrepreneur, I believe social entrepreneurs are uniquely positioned to bring those ingredients together. And this is why we're all here. So in 2016, Deloitte ran a survey that said 87% of millennials, of course it was a millennial survey, believe that business success should be measured by more than just profit, and that businesses must consider the impact that they're having in the environment and in their communities. That's almost 90% of a group that is your potential workforce, your potential customers, and that are starting to become your potential investors, and probably are a lot of the people who are contributing online. These people want to work for, buy from, and invest in companies that align with their values, and who are pursuing both profit and purpose. So being able to tell a really compelling impact story about the impact you're having and why you're doing it is incredibly important for being able to attract those 4 ingredients that we're talking about this week. But when I think about the social entrepreneurs that I know that have scaled, the stories that I know of successful social enterprises in scaling, I think a lot about how leveraging your impact story in order to scale can go really well or really badly. So I think we heard a story earlier of Patagonia where leveraging your impact story went really well. But I wanted to share an example of where that became a challenge. So if we think about the story of Tom's shoes, and probably lots of people are familiar with Tom's shoes, canvas shoes. The founder of Tom's started with a really positive intention, a really good intention, true. He was in Argentina, if you don't know the story. He met an American woman who was running a shoe drive. She said that kids in even relatively developed countries like Argentina didn't always have shoes, which had a negative impact on their lives. Maybe they weren't able to go to school. Maybe it had health consequences. And so for the founder of Tom's, that had a real impact on him, and he wanted to do something about it. So he went home, and sometime later, he started Tom's. Fast forward several years, Tom's was huge. Shoes in stores everywhere, brand really well known. But they were also in the news, and it wasn't for such a good story. It was basically to say in the news that the impact story that they'd been telling about their business, they had this one-for-one business model. For every shoe sold, one would get donated and have a positive impact on a kid's life in a developing country. That was the story that they told. The news basically said all of that is a lie. In fact, they're not having a positive impact at all. they're kind of causing some negative consequences, putting shoemakers out of business, flooding the market with low quality free goods. And so Tom's put in the work to actually deliver on their impact promise. They made changes to the way that they were doing business, but they had built a brand, a customer following. They'd built a lot of awareness, all based on this impact story that turned out they didn't really deliver on it. And so I think for social entrepreneurs like myself and other social entrepreneurs that I've met, this story was just a really clear example of why it's so important that if you're going to build a business, a brand, and a following based on an impact promise, you have to be able to make sure that you're delivering on it. I think, as you scale a social enterprise, there's these tensions between your profit goals and your impact goals. And so as a social entrepreneur, and kind of my advice to all social entrepreneurs is know your North Star. What is your North Star? And always come back to that as you're scaling. In the short term, delivering on your impact promise sometimes means saying no to certain opportunities. It sometimes means that you need to step back and reevaluate your approaches as a business. But in the long run, like I said, it positions social entrepreneurs, having that strong impact story positions social entrepreneurs to attract the ingredients for scale in a way that no other business really can. And so speaking of those 4 ingredients for scale, I have 3 of my own to add. Actually, they're not just my own. These 3 ingredients, they all start with a P, so they're really easy to remember. But they were actually sort of brought together by Steve Case, who was one of the founders of AOL. And he now works with entrepreneurs in the US. And he talks a lot about what it takes for third wave entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs who are in the third wave of technology innovation, they're working in really complex systems like healthcare or education, much like a lot of our breakout teams are this weekend. He talks about the ingredients that are needed for those entrepreneurs to be successful. And so those 3 ingredients, the first, he says, is partnerships. So you're trying to, as a social entrepreneur, you're trying to build businesses that move the needle on really complex issues. Usually, your business is part of an incredibly complex system with lots of legacy institutions, thinking about organizations like government and hospitals and schools. And as a social entrepreneur, you need to start identifying the partners you will need around the table down the line. You need to start identifying them today. Even if you don't need to start engaging them directly right away. In many cases, these are big, slower legacy institutions. And so if you wait until you actually need them on your side, you're going to be too late. The second ingredient that he talks about and that I've seen with social entrepreneurs is policy. Now, I doubt any other speaker is going to talk about policy as an ingredient for their entrepreneurial success or innovation. But my business partner comes from a political background, and so I have to for her. But I also know that almost every social entrepreneur that I've met is 90% entrepreneur and 10% advocate. A lot of this advocacy comes because they're trying to change systems that have been built to create inequalities. And so a business can only do so much, and they need the policy environment to actually thrive, for their business to thrive and scale. So policy is the second P of my extra 3 ingredients. And the final one is perseverance. And so I think a lot of the teams that we have today, I think it's pretty clear that they have perseverance. But this one's really important because entrepreneurs that are working, as Steve Case put it, in the third wave, or social entrepreneurs who are trying to move the needle on really complex social issues, these aren't things that happen overnight. They can be amplified and intensified like we're doing this week, which is amazing, but they don't happen overnight. And so perseverance, knowing that you're working with a model that people aren't necessarily familiar with, really takes that perseverance to drive through and make the change that is that North Star that you always have to keep coming back to as you scale. So with those extra 3 ingredients, I challenge all of the teams to consider what partnerships, what policy do they need to add to their set of ingredients to make their ventures a success, and keep demonstrating the perseverance that they have this weekend. And thank you so much for having me tonight.
Hi, I'm Amber Mack, and if you like this video, click to subscribe to the Breakout Project channel to watch more videos just like this one.